Hi.
And good evening, everyone. Thank you for spending your evening with Fleisher. Fleisher from a Distance, the Wind Challenge Edition is a special program designed to showcase Wind Challenge artists through the years. The Fleisher Challenge was founded in 1978 as a platform for local artists to exhibit. This effort was later generously supported by the Dina and Jerry Wind through the Wind Foundation, bringing the Wind Challenge to the forefront of exhibitions in Philadelphia. Now, this important exhibition is supported by the Dina Wind Art Foundation, and I invite you to find out more by visiting dinawindfoundation.art. I will place the address in the chat. This is one of the most prestigious exhibitions in our area, and every year, 6 to 9 artists are selected to exhibit in our galleries. Yvonne Lung was selected for the 2009 Wind Challenge. She's an interdisciplinary artist with work ranging from sculpture, performance, and video to social practice. Her work is about social change through interaction, learning what we have in common by using her heritage as a vehicle to address shared experiences despite cultural differences. And Yvonne, how are you?
I am good. I hope I have enough daylight to last till the end of the talk. We'll see.
I think you'll be fine. Yes. So Yvonne, before we get started, I just wanted to ask you if you can just tell me a little bit about your experience in 2009.
Oh, that was to be honest, okay, so I moved to Philly in 2007. And so
Okay.
as an artist and knowing that Philadelphia has a really vibrant art community and art scene, I was trying to apply for all the things that I can apply to try to get my name out there. And so the Fleisher Wind Challenge was one of them. So in 2008, when I applied, I was really surprised that I got selected for an exhibition. One of the reasons is because when I applied for it, I didn't apply with a portfolio. I actually applied for an idea, the project that I was going to make, which I will talk about in the artist talk. So I was really grateful that Fleisher picked me based on a proposal for the show. So the exhibition that I had, the idea I had was created specifically for the exhibition. And it was also based on when I first came in town, one of my working experience, which I will talk about in a bit as well. So I was really surprised, but also really grateful in the fact that me and my partner, we constructed a room within the gallery with for 2x4s and drywall and everything. I forgot Dave Q. Let me think. Was Dave Q working then?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, he was. And so Fleischer was really generous in terms of letting me actually build a room in the space, and the whole experience was just really great because people were really supportive about it. We had some really beautiful cards printed, and just to be able to test out this idea, and it was kind of proposed specifically for the space, so it was pretty exciting.
Well, I'm glad they did, because otherwise we wouldn't have you here today.
Yes.
And your work is actually quite important, and
Thank
you know, I really love it. I'm a fan. So anyway, I'll let you lead this.
Okay. Let's see, should I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right, let's see, share screen. Now that we are all used to this sort of Zoom thing happening. And all right, guys, welcome to my talk. Here's a picture of me at 14 years old, and if you see the little television there, it's dating me. But this is me at 14 with my bassoon, where when my father tried to veer me down another path, but I stayed steadfast and stayed with art. I titled my talk Enter the Dragon, one paying homage to Bruce Lee, awesome guy, as you all know, but also My last name, Lung, literally means dragon in Chinese. And so there you go. So I just quickly, before I go into my work, I want to talk about a few things about my own artwork. First and foremost, for me personally, being an artist is about being a critic of society. That is, for me, my main statement, my main goal as being an artist. And so the kind of work that I make that you will see is really a lot of times commentary on what I see that's going on in society, some of my thoughts and reflections. And I try to use my art to express that. Second of all, my background, my growing up, my experiences all have a really, really heavy influence on my artwork and also how I kind of see things. I moved around a lot when I was young. I was actually born in Fleisher, New York, but my younger sister was born in Montreal. And then, let's see, we moved to Taiwan when I finished first grade in the States. And then for 7 years of elementary schools, my family moved 5 times. So, and then after 10 years living in Taiwan, my father decided that there's no way I'm going to test into college in Taiwan. We stayed in Taiwan, so we moved back to the States. So starting my junior year in high school, we moved to the suburbs of Houston, Texas. And then 2 years later, I graduated from high school and then moved off and went to college. I was at one college for 2 years and then transferred to another college and was there for 3.5 years. And then, so as you can imagine, moving around so much has had a profound effect on on me and also on how I look at things. And in terms of my artwork, how it has influences that, one, it has always put me in a position of being the observer, because every time when I change into a new environment, I always have to basically observe my environment before I can know how to act. Second of all, that also makes me really adaptable to whatever environment that I get thrown into. And so because I kind of have this sort of standalone way of being able to look at things and assess things based on centering myself on that, it gives me kind of a unique point of view. And so when I start to make my artwork, I try to basically be the observer and create work that kind of expresses my observations. So with that said, I'm going to introduce you guys into my first line of serious work, which is what I did in graduate school. I received my MFA in ceramics, actually. And actually, before I go into that, I want to talk a little bit about actually the role of identity in my work as well. When I started out in undergrad, I actually have a BFA in graphic design. And first year in graphic design, I designed, we had a packaging design assignment. And basically the assignment was pick a produce that you feel like the label needs to or the packaging needs to be redesigned, and then present that. So being Chinese, I picked soy sauce bottles because I always felt a little too, traditional. I would like to spruce it up a little bit. So I did redesign these labels for soy sauce, a series of soy sauce. I picked out nice rice paper, did calligraphy on it, and presented it. And for crit that day, the professor decided to do crit, anonymous crit, everyone write down on a little slip of paper and to submit and put it in front of each piece. And so we did our crit that way. So as I was looking through these little pieces of paper, everyone's like, oh, it looks really beautiful. It's really nice reinvention, et cetera, et cetera. And then I got this one comment that said, the design looks really beautiful, but I really feel that you were taking advantage of your heritage. And that kind of gave you a leg up in redesigning this label. And that really, really struck me. It really made me kind of shy away from making work that has anything to do with my background, because I didn't want people to think that I was using my background, using my culture as a crutch. So I went into graphic design, finished my design degree, and became really unhappy as a graphic designer, and actually decided I want to go into studio art. And so I went into ceramics. So the next body of work that you'll see is actually first half of my career in ceramics, where I created a line of work called Sex, Violence, and Fairy Tales. And it's kind of like my reflection on Western fairy tales, because I actually grew up reading it a lot, but they were all translated into Chinese because this is growing up in Taiwan. So a lot of things that happen, I couldn't understand why. So for example, here's a piece about, let me go back a little bit. This is Little Red Riding Hood, a teapot about Little Red Riding Hood. This is about Little Red Riding Hood as well, but kind of like the tension, because I started doing research on fairy tales and folklore and a lot of the psychological thing that goes on within it. So Little Red Riding Hood, between, the big bad wolf, what that means, the age of Little Red Riding Hood, this sort of like at the cusp of puberty, et cetera, et cetera. I became really interested in a lot of these like analytical like text about fairy tales. Some of them, and then just like plain reading the original version of things. So for example, this one is titled By the Time Cinderella Got Her Shoe. And it was after both of her stepsister either chopped off their heel or chopped off their toes to try to fit their foot into the shoe. So again, this is also made in clay. That talks about what it would look like when Cinderella actually, by the time she got it. This one is about Snow White, where in the original story, Snow White's stepmom actually really wanted to eat her heart. And so when the huntsman finally let her go, but like got a pig's heart and presented it, this is my sort of imaginary of like what the stepmother, how the stepmother would eat the heart, which is actually a pig heart. And so I literally actually bought a pig's heart from a Chinese restaurant, a Chinese grocery store, and cooked it and stuck it on forks. And I used that to kind of model the pig's heart right here. This is again all made out of clay. And with the plate, I also I created the plate from scratch as well, with various decals and lettering. And the text of that really just describes that passage of, describing when the stepmother was eating the heart. And then as I was like working in clay, I also really got into the Renaissance / Baroque Rococo artist Bernini, just the way that he sculpts in marble. And so I really wanted to make a life-size bust that's paying homage to Bernini. And so I made this piece called, this piece is basically the stepmother eating the pig's heart. And so again, this is all made in clay. This is life-size, and formulated the glaze. So the surface of the glaze would look like this beautiful, smooth marble, white marble. And this is actually made in 4 parts. The head actually detaches, comes off. So the seam is kind of hidden by the choker. The hand actually is sitting right in here that you can take out. And then the torso part right here comes off from the base. So this is about, 2.5 feet tall, I think. Let me get some from the different views. Not as good as Bernini, but it was a really great learning lesson in terms of like, how do you like sculpt cloth? How do you like, what do you do with hair, as something that is solid? What are the facial features? And working with clay, you also have to think about gravity, how the, all the intricacies of it. This is a very simple piece. So I started to make this line of work. I really actually was thinking of Baroque Rococo. So this piece is related to the Little Mermaid. And so in the original story, her tongue got cut out. And so this piece is called For a Pair of Legs. And then there's her tongue, again, made out of clay with some both mid-range fire and low-range fire glazes. This piece is called Was It Really for a Pair of Legs? Here's the prince and the Little Mermaid before the Little Mermaid decides to get a pair of legs. In the story they talk about like, oh, it's because Little Mermaid wanted to be able to dance. But I'm like, No, it's because they want to get it on. Like with that little fish lower half, it's just not gonna work. Um, this one, this one was a really interesting story. This one was called The Red Shoes, and you know, we've seen a lot of iterations of this story in movie and cinema. But it talks about the idea of like wearing red shoes to confirmation was considered a huge sin. At least that's what I read in the original story itself. And for me, as a child living in Taiwan, I could not understand why that was such a sin, because in Chinese culture, red is what you wear for weddings, for like birthdays and stuff. It's a good color. But this girl wanting to wear red shoes was basically condemned to dance forever because she angered God, and the angel would not let her go into a house of worship because of her red shoes. And finally, the only way that she could stop dancing day and night was to have her feet cut off. And the little pair of feet with the red shoes went dancing away. So this is a Hans Christian Andersen story. And so I created this piece called Let's Dance, based off of David Bowie's song, Let's Dance. And in the song, there's that phrase, put on your red shoes and dance. And so again, I was looking at anatomy textbooks to try to figure out in terms of like, you know, if it were to cut off, where the bones would be. But again, this is all made out of clay, including the box itself with the little label and everything. Heartaches happen a lot in ceramics. This piece is called, this is Rapunzel, actually, the story about Rapunzel when when she finally guessed what the name, guessed his name. And what happened was I was firing this piece for its first firing in a bisque fire, and the piece blew up in the kiln. Now in the story, the original story, when Rumpelstiltskin heard that Rapunzel guessed his name, he was so angry that he stomped his foot into the ground, and he stomped so hard that like one leg went into the ground. And so he tried to pull himself out by pulling his other leg. And by doing that, he pulled himself in half. And that is how Rumpelstiltskin died, which I thought was just like, this is really gruesome. So I kind of had like, you know, you can see kind of where his little, right below here, I have like blood coming out. Originally, I was kind of creating this piece, and I was actually thinking of Takashi Murakami as this Japanese artist, where he had these beautiful anime figures made, and one of them, it was a pair. The female pair was this typical anime girl with huge boobs. I think she was like squeezing her boobs, and like milk was just streaming out, and it like came out in this like beautiful ribbon of liquid. And then for the anime male character, he was, you know, giving himself he was jacking off, and the ejaculation was like coming out as this beautiful stream of like liquid. And so I was thinking of like trying to create something like that with the blood for Rumpelstiltskin, having this beautiful stream of blood just coming out as he was trying to pull himself out of this hole, while both of them was standing on this pile of intestines. But when this piece blew up in the kiln, which I spent probably over 100 hours on these pieces, my professor was like, all right, you have 3 minutes to mourn this piece and you have to move on. And so really quickly, I tried to save this piece in terms of literally it blew up. It was a Rumpelstiltskin that blew up. So I kind of like glue this piece back together, and then have this kind of displayed in a sense where like she's really kind of like in shock seeing Rumpelstiltskin in pieces with like blood everywhere. So this is kind of a way of me saving the piece and still being able to like, fortunate, unfortunate, but fortunately actually kind of fit with the theme. So this line of work of fairy tales was kind of like bringing a little bit of my own life experience in terms of like how my culture, my background, my life experience kind of made me look at things differently and start to question things. The graduate program that I went to was a 3-year program, and we had to do a midway exhibition and then our thesis exhibition. So this line of work was for my midway exhibition. And when I started to think about what I should do my thesis, I decided to tackle the race issue, being a Chinese American female artist in America. I have some pieces, but this next series of work that you see has to do with my kind of like my experience with race. So this piece is something that really happened to me. Years ago, when I used to attend ceramic conferences, one year it was in Kansas City. And so I drove, me and my ex-husband and my friend Mie, we decided to drive from Lubbock, Texas, which is where I was at, to go to Kansas City to attend this ceramic conference. My ex-husband is Taiwanese. My friend Mie is from Japan, and Mie and I were both in ceramics. So we got to Kansas, we went to the conference, and it was great, it was fun. And then the night before we were going to leave, because we had to leave really early next morning in order to like make good time to get back into Texas. The night before, he's like, okay, let's go try to go to a grocery store and get some breakfast items so that we can just like eat on the road tomorrow morning. So this is pre-smartphone. This is in 2001, I believe. And so there's no way that we can like look up anywhere, like where we can go to get breakfast or whatever. So I thought I was being smart. I was like, there's this really huge road. It's like 4 lanes. I'm sure if we just keep driving, we will run into something that we can get breakfast, either a supermarket or a store or whatever. So it was late at night. We just kept driving, and it started to look a little more and more shady. And so it's like, oh wait, there's a supermarket. So finally we pull into the supermarket, and as we pulled in to park, we got out, this other car was there, and they're like, hey motherfuckers. And we just thought that they were kind of yelling at their homies or whatnot. So we got out of the car, and we were about to like head to the grocery store. And then as we were walking, they were like, get the fuck out of here, you fucking chinks. And we're like, whoa, let's hurry up and get into the supermarket. So that was the inspiration for this piece. And I kind of did it in a Grecian urn style, because as being in grad school, reading through like ceramic history, the Grecian urns actually was really kind of like in the West, the first place where you would have actually dialogue. They have dialogue written on them, kind of almost like a comic book in a way. So this kind of acted as a 2-frame comic for me to kind of describe the situation that happened. So the form itself is definitely a direct copy of a Grecian urn that I have found in history books. But then the decorations, in terms of like on the rims and the edges, I used very, very traditional Chinese decorations and kind of fused them together. So this piece is about 2 feet tall, where basically I threw the base on the wheel, and then the rest of it I coil build on the wheel all the way to the top. Another piece tackling race. This piece is called All Whiteys Look Alike. I think this piece is called All Whiteys Look Alike. And we have sayings of like all Asians look alike or all Black people look alike. And I gotta be honest, like there are times that I feel like all white people kind of look the same to me. So this is my take on that. And this is actually, I found 3 different G.I. Joe doll heads and basically made a mold of it and casted it over and over in white porcelain. And so there's like over 1,000 G.I. Joe heads here. But what I also like about it is that with the Purex detergent box having all these G.I. Joe heads pouring out, their little lingo says it whitens white and it brightens color. And just the name Purex, you start thinking about like all the connotations in terms of race, in terms of white, in terms of like, well, the other color. So this piece kind of is like an installation, my thought on like all these, you know, to me, all whiteys look alike. And then I start to think about the idea of what the skin color, your skin color means. And this piece is inspired by one day I was in a ceramic supply store and they were having a sale on porcelain slip. And as I look at these bottles of porcelain slip, it's all these different flesh colors that back in the day when old ladies used to make porcelain dolls, they can like slip cast various different flesh color for their porcelain dolls. And there were like names of these flesh colors would be like Indian summer, you know, just really kind of like inappropriate naming when we look at it nowadays, and like even more so nowadays, but even back then, and this was like in 2000 and when did I make this piece? 2002. No, 2000, actually 2006. And so I actually found a slip that was just flesh and is the top one that you see. And then I found Oriental flesh, which is the bottom one that you see. So they're basically Barbie doll heads that I took and make a mold of. And what I did was actually the way that it's displayed, it's the first one you see is the first cast, the second one you see is the second cast, and the third and fourth. So they're all in actually the cast order. And by the end of this year, I think this is cast number 200 something, I believe. You can kind of see that there's that wearing away of the features. And for those of you who don't know, when you cast in ceramics, when you do slip casting, the sodium silicate starts to eat away at the mold. So any sort of like commercial things that you see that are made by molds and is in ceramics, they have to like remake that mold periodically so that the features don't get like really like erased. So this piece is called The Color of My Flesh, and you can see at the end of it, I also display the slip bottles for it. And part of the reason is because I always talk to people about the idea of me as an Asian. You know, I feel very Americanized. I am an American. I was born here. I don't see the color of my flesh unless I look into the mirror. But I know that when I go out and when I talk to people and I face people, if a stranger sees me, the first thing that they're going to think is like, this person is Asian. And it's not until I start speaking English with no accent that I validate myself as an American. So like this sort of like facade, this color, the color of my flesh, even the features can be worn down or whatnot. With that color, people still see me as something other than American. And you know, again and again, that always like it always happens. And it's kind of interesting because like I always talk to people that like, even though I lived in Taiwan for 10 years and I am fluent, you know, in Mandarin Chinese, the fact that I can speak English without an accent is my cash in a way in this society, because then people see me different than immigrant. And I find that like really mind blowing. Let's see. Next piece. So I got into a residency in 2006, and the residency really kind of opened my mind because I also got in touch, you know, was able to spend, you know, 9 weeks with 64 other artists from all disciplines. It was not a ceramic. This was after grad school. So I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my work, because there came to a point where I was making something in clay, and it was like you know, early in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, and I had to fix it because it cracked in the kiln. And I was working on this piece. I was like, I can make this piece in cardboard and it would say the exact same thing. So after grad school, I was thinking about what it is that I want to talk about in my work. And when I went to this residency, it kind of opened up a whole new area of me in terms of like art making, just really thinking about the form, the medium fitting the message rather than trying to fit the message into the medium. So this is my first performance piece. It's called the Peony Pavilion. And basically I have there's this little house. This little house was built by another resident at the artist residency. And basically he opened up a mini residency for the people in the residency to apply for a residency on the campus of this residency. So I applied for a mini residency in this. So for an entire day, I provided, and you can choose whatever you like, Asian massage, math tutoring, nunchuck lessons, and feng shui advice, which actually I'm pretty bad at math, and actually I don't know how to do any of the other stuff. So basically this was a performance piece of like trying to use the stereotype and see how I can pull this off. This is actually inspired by an incident that my sister encountered in high school, which when we were in Houston, in the suburbs of Houston, Texas. And she used to tell people that she knew Kung Fu and no one would question her. And it was basically because she looks Chinese, she's Asian, she looks Asian. Like no one saying, nah, prove it or anything. And so with this performance piece, I'm trying to pull off in terms of like faking it through and see how people will respond to it. I did get people who wanted Asian massages, and I also had to give nunchuck lessons, which was really painful because I kept hitting myself. Fortunately, I bought foam padded nunchucks, so when I did accidentally hit myself, it wasn't that bad. So this was kind of my foray into like performance art, and also trying to get my audience to be a part of it, to experience what it is that I'm trying to say. So that was really fun, actually. I really enjoyed it. Let's see, next piece. I want to talk about, as I was doing research, let's see, because the next year I did an installation piece. I was, me and all the 60 other people at this residency next year was invited by an artist to go to her property on 29 Palms in Southern California to do installations, to make work and stuff like that. So during this time, I've been living in Las Vegas for a few years. And one of the trips that me and my partner took was to Utah, first to see the Spiral Jetty and the Great Salt Lake. But when we were trying to get to the Spiral Jetty, you pass by the Golden Spike Museum. And for those of you who don't know what the Golden Spike Museum is, the Golden Spike Museum commemorates the exact spot where the railroad from the East Coast and the railroad from the West Coast finally came and connect. And then they put down a golden spike to commemorate that. As I started to do research into this, I start reading about Chinese railroad workers and how they contributed a huge part into the railroad building on the West Coast. Discrimination, like all, that whole treasure trove. And yet I remember when I was at the Golden Spike Museum, looking at this photo right here, commemorating that moment, you don't actually really see any Asians there at all, any Chinese worker there at all. So this kind of inspired me to create, I hope that is the next image. Yes. A performance piece out in Southern California by 29 Palms, Joshua Tree area, to do this 3-day performance piece called Porcelain, Not a Chinaman's Chance. So porcelain is kind of an invention of China, and historically in Europe, before they were able to find out the knowledge of how to make porcelain and the materials, porcelain was really highly prized. That compared to a Chinaman's life that's building a railroad, it's interesting that the price of a porcelain piece would be so much higher than a life. Not a Chinaman's chance is a saying back then during those times when a Chinese railroad worker or an immigrant back then in the 1800s, they can show up in court, they can try to plea a case, but I think even to the point of their testimonies would not even been taken into consideration. So if a Chinaman ends up in court, there's no chance that they can win a case, and hence the saying, not a Chinaman's chance. So this was kind of a 3-day performance piece where I had this mold right here, where I basically slip casted porcelain and start building this miniature railroad in the desert. Excuse my really funny outfit here, because for those of you who have never lived in a desert before, it's, if you don't cover yourself well, you'll get sunburned really, really easily. As a matter of fact, a bunch of us that were there, everyone got sunburned except for me, because I've been used to living in the desert when I was in Vegas. So I spent 3 days basically building this unfired porcelain railroad, which you can see has spanned for quite a while. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning just because it's cooler at that time. This was kind of in the middle of the summer, and maybe worked about until 3 in the afternoon. Looking to the east, looking to the west. Oh. And so this is the piece, Porcelain, Not a Chinaman's Chance. This is a piece that I kind of reworked. I had it in my thesis show, and I actually built this giant like takeout box, and that was when it cracked, and I was painting it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's what I was thinking, I could just screen print takeout box and do this. So this is a story that happened to me as well. When my sister and I were in undergrad, we were actually the same majors. We were both graphic design majors. So there were a couple times where we had classes together, and whenever when we're in class together, if we're sitting next to each other, we just kind of like speak Chinese to each other, and and it's not talking about other people, it's like what we're comfortable with when we're talking to each other. And my best friend at that time, Jimmy, one day said to us, and he knows that I was born in the States and my sister was born in Canada, he said, if you guys want to speak your language, go back to your own country. So this piece is kind of inspired by it. It's titled Chinese. It has a few spaces and then dash out. So it took out the word take. So instead of Chinese takeout, it's Chinese out. And this was displayed at Fleisher Gallery for one of their juried exhibitions. So people kind of, this is inspired by the artist. Oh shoot, I forgot Alex, I forgot the name. Big name artist. But you can take a fortune cookie from this pile, and if you open it up, the fortune cookie will say, if you want to speak your language, go back to your own country. Which these fortune cookies were made in Chinatown here in Philadelphia, actually. I was really surprised that they let me, have this message in there. They didn't ask anything. They said, okay, we'll do it. So thank you for that fortune cookie shop in Chinatown. So this is the piece that I displayed at the Fleischer Art Memorial for my Win Challenge. At this point, I moved to Philly for about a year, and right when I moved to Philly, the move to Philly was kind of a last minute decision. I was fired at a job in Savannah, and so it was a last minute decision to move to Philadelphia. So I had to look for ways of making a living really quick. I started working at a restaurant, easiest job to be able to get. But I also needed more money. So I was like, you know what? I should really utilize my bilingual skills. So I actually applied and got the job of being a Mandarin interpreter for U.S. Immigration Court and Homeland Security. And I worked that job for 5 years until I had to get re-fingerprinted. But this piece was inspired by my experience working in the U.S. Immigration Court. Specifically this one case that I interpreted for. So it was, they're all asylum cases. And so I interpret usually as an interpreter, and this piece, by the way, is called Tool. As an interpreter, you have to be a tool. You can't give the respondent any advice. You can't, you have to basically, whatever their expression is, you kind of have to emote that as well. You have to be totally a tool for the courts to use. So I was interpreting a case, and at the end of it, the respondent actually said, can I say something to the judge? May I say something to the judge? And he looked at his attorney, and the attorney looked a little bit puzzled, and the judge permitted it. And the man, I hope I don't cry because every time I talk about this, I cry. He went and knelt down in front of the judge, and he started to say, please, Your Honor, don't deport me. My wife is about to be deported. We have 2 kids. And if I am to be deported, what is going to happen to my children? And he was crying. And as you see now, I'm getting worked up a little bit. And this is like over 10 years ago. And as he is crying, I started to cry too, because I have to interpret this for him. And so I started to cry, and then, the judge listened and everything, listened to his plea and everything. And then the case, finished. And usually with these cases, I go in whenever I'm called in for, I don't stay with a case. And actually, out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases that I've interpreted for, I don't think I've actually repeated a case. So I usually don't know, unless I'm there for the judge's decision, I usually don't know how these cases end. So after an interpreting job, I always have to hand in a paperwork for the judge so they can sign it, so that I can, submit it to the company that I work for and get paid for it. And as I was handing this to the judge, I said, Your Honor, I'm really sorry. She's like, what are you sorry for? She's like, I was like, I kind of lost it back there. And she's like, you're kind of new. But also sometimes you don't know if these are actually real or not. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? And she said, there are definitely times where the respondent is trying to like get me to, sympathize with them. She's like, I definitely had where a respondent was like sitting in the witness stand. I'm looking down at the paperwork and I hear she's crying and looking at my paperwork, and I'll look over at her and she's looking at me to see if I am being moved by her. I was like, oh my gosh. And it's not that I don't believe this man, that he was lying. He was crying, and just because he was crying, the way that he cried, it really, really like shook me. But it really kind of made me think of like, if these people have, don't have to hold back and are able to tell their stories, what would their stories be? So my proposal for the WIN challenge at that time was that I want to interview immigrants in the community and have them tell me like their experiences of coming from there to here. But what I did was that I did not show them. I did not show their face, nor did I play their voices. You see me on one half of the screen and basically being the interpreter, being the tool. And then I asked each participant to bring something that was really significant to them, that they brought out from where they came from, that they brought with them from where they came from. And I would ask them all the same set of questions, and I would also then interpret. So part of the reason why I did not show any of the identity of these participants is because, one, a few of them did have immigration issues and they didn't want to be known. But also at that time, this is 2008, 2009, people saw immigration is really just more of an issue. They don't see the faces of immigrants. They don't see like each of them as human beings. They just call it the immigrant issue. So I really kind of want to emphasize that. And that's why also I titled the piece Tool. We constructed this little room, complete with like fluorescent lighting. It's really boring. There's just like a bench there to actually kind of simulate what immigration court is like. Immigration court is actually really dry. It's not like what you see on Law and Order. It's not like what you see on TV. It's really, really dry. I mean, the content is really dramatic, but in terms of the setting, in terms of how the lawyers and the government's the attorneys are all, it's just really dry, cut and dry, present your case, that's it. So I kind of wanted to create that environment. It's not supposed to be entertaining because this video is also an hour long. I don't think anyone could have sat through that whole hour to listen to these interviews, but that is also kind of the point as well, is that, you know, it's not a short and easy process. It's really, really a long, drawn out process. And it's not, you know, fun to watch at all. So this is Tool. So this piece kind of kicked off my series of translation and interpretation, the idea of it, because I was a you know, interpreter in court. The next piece, ooh, that was a fancy transition. So at this time I also joined the Philadelphia Chinatown Dragon Boat team, which it was because of that piece that I started to get in touch with the Chinatown community. And this has been playing a really huge role actually in my life, because it really opened up my eyes to immigrants that have a different immigration experience than I do. I'm not gonna lie, I come from more of a middle class immigrant family. My parents are educated. And when I encountered you know, my immigration experience is a cakewalk compared to what some of these people have gone through. And it really humbled me in the terms of like, just how these people, even though I'm from a different place, that they opened their arms and accepted me, and the fact that I'm not even from China, I'm from Taiwan, or I grew up in Taiwan. So it was really, this has really become a really, really important part of my life, of being a part of this community, is that it's more about like, we are all here now. We're all here in America. It's like, what it is that we can do and set aside all our differences from what was before. So this piece is not super obvious, but, and if you guys want to, you can go to my website. There's a link to this video. But in 2009, I was at another artist residency, and this was an international artist residency where we had people from all over the world. And I started to think about this idea of, again, translating, interpreting my own experience as an interpreter. And so I decided to do this piece called The Tall Tale. And, you know, most of us know what a tall tale is in American culture, is this sort of like really exaggerated story. And so I picked the most American, you know, Paul Bunyan, the story of Paul Bunyan. And basically I took a few sentences from the story of Paul Bunyan and asked artists that were at this residency from all the different countries. I think I had someone from Pakistan, the Philippines, Korea. I'm trying to think of other ones. Italian, or there's Urdu. So all the different, like there was like 9 different countries / languages that I asked them to read kind of like the sections of Paul Bunyan stories that I got, and have them, and I recorded them all their doing, and I had them interpret on the spot into their own language. And then a week later, I basically edited out all the English part, and it's just their own language that they're listening to, and had them interpret it back into English. And so the audio for that became the audio for these 2 Paul Bunyan animations that I found talking about the story. But then you'll see subtitles where it is the actual line that they originally interpreted. So this kind of convoluted like back and forth is mainly thinking about the idea of memory, thinking about the idea of like what gets lost in translation, or how do you reinterpret it in your own culture because you don't necessarily have that. So for example, it talks about Paul Bunyan being able to eat 40 bowls of porridge in the morning. When it went to the Filipino artists, because he couldn't find the word for porridge in Tagalog, when it came back into English, it turned into 40 bowls of rice. So there were a lot of these sort of like mismatch, you know, partially not understanding what is being said, partially not understanding why they said at that time in their own language. So it kind of created this like multi-layer of like mistranslations. And this is the result of the piece, which is titled The Tall Tale. So the next piece is called When in Rome. And it's a dual site exhibition. I was offered to be in an exhibition that was actually dual site by University of Delaware. One end of it was at the University of Delaware's gallery that used to be in the Creighton building. And the other one is at Asian Arts Initiative. So this, again, is like a site-specific piece where I was trying to think about the uniqueness of having a dual site. And so I was like, what can I create? What can I do to kind of like, so that like, you know, to kind of, I have two locations, like, how can I utilize that? And it came to me when a friend of mine posted on Facebook, and he's one of my Dragon Boat teammates, and he's from Foochow. And it was a video of a Bible. Someone had a Bible open, but it was phonetically spelled in Foochow. So, but in English alphabet. So if you just literally read the text, you are actually pronouncing Foochow and you're actually reading the Bible in Foochow. And I thought that was fascinating. And then another thing that, a little tidbit that kind of inspired this is the imperfection of Google Translation. It gets close, but for someone like me that is good at both languages, when you start looking at Google Translate, if you translate an entire paragraph, it just starts to not make sense. So this piece is called When in Rome, and basically I set up where people are Skyping to each other. I actually set up fake backgrounds. Obviously, this is before Zoom. This was in 2000. Oh, I can't remember when this was. It was definitely before Zoom. So I set up actually fake backgrounds so that it kind of disguises where you're Skyping from. So the people in the gallery, they don't know who they will be Skyping to. They just know that they're Skyping with someone. And I have little cheat sheets of different languages that everything is spelled out phonetically. And I try to see if people can interact with each other without speaking English, but trying to use these conversation cheat sheets to try to have a conversation with a person at the other end. And so that was like really kind of fun to like, because if you look at, there you go, there's the background in action there. You might think that this person is actually somewhere in Asia or something, but I also kind of did like very stereotypical, here's the Northern European, very clean IKEA background. So this piece is called When in Rome. There's my mom. So again, playing with the idea of translation and also memory, in terms of memory, like what do you remember? What gets lost through time? So I did this piece with my parents called I Love You. Part of the reason is because I have never heard my parents say I love you to each other. And it's very Chinese. I may even say it's very Asian. But my parents also have a pretty like fucked up relationship. They're like at each other's throat. And so I did this piece with them where I interviewed them separately, but I asked them both the same set of questions. And really the questions that I asked was actually, all the questions are related to right up to the point when they got married, their courtship. Like I wanted to find out actually, why did you marry each other? How did you fall in love? What are some of those romantic feelings that you have each other? And also seeing how they remember it similarly or differently. And then by talking about these feelings and reminiscing back to it, I want to see if they can say, I love you to each other on camera. They're interviewed separately and they didn't get to see what the other person said. And so to kind of once remove that again, in terms of the idea of interpretation and translation, I printed out all the dialogue, all the text, the script, and send it to a friend of mine who is an actor. Him and his wife are both actors. And they just basically read the script dry. And basically I inserted that as the dub for this video. So again, if you want to watch this video, it is on my website. This is called I Love You. And it's a surprise who actually says I love you and who refuses to say I love you on camera to the other person. But this is, let's see, do I have another photo of this, or this is the, oh no, that's the only photo. So you'll see my dad sitting actually on the other side of the Chinese calligraphy painting when I interview him. This might be the last piece in terms of like the translation series. And this was in conjunction with a friend of mine who did a guerrilla performance festival. She does it every once in a while and does it in different locations. So this time she chose the City Hall underground concourse for all the trains and the subways as the location. Like artists can pick whichever location they want and do this sort of like guerrilla performance. So I decided to do this piece called A Love Song for You, you know, thinking about people who are there to sing for people. But the thing is, like, I choose the song depending on who comes up to me. And also, I'm having headphones on. I just want you to know I'm a horrible singer. I am horrible at singing. And so with headphones on, when I'm singing with headphones on, I feel like I sound great, but I have no idea how I sound. And to be honest, when I saw some videos that people had posted, it was really, really bad. I was like super embarrassed. But what I was trying to do is picking out love songs for people and just really try to sing it with all my heart, with sincerity, eye contact, and just like really try to like express that love, that translating that love through the song. Because you know how love songs are. Sometimes you just feel like this is I have so much love that I want to like tell this person. So I really loved, like, actually for this gentleman on the left, I sang him Ella Fitzgerald's version of Night and Day, one of my favorite songs. And you know, he was so nice. And afterwards, we also talked about different versions of Night and Day, and it was really, really lovely. I had friends come by. My friend on the right, I sang her Close to You by the Carpenters, and she did have gold hair and blue eyes. It was wonderful. But it was really fun because I didn't get to hear what I sound like, but I was just like really trying to emote that you know, feeling of love, seeing how it translates across. Some people got like really, really embarrassed and started to back away, but then there are some people that like really, really enjoyed it. Let's see. So recently I started to work on a series called Dish, and I have different sort of branching off of these. And Dish is a project where I work with with youth to talk to either their elders or family members about a favorite dish that they really enjoy, and they do kind of an interview with the elder that makes it or the family member that makes it, to learn how to make that dish and have a conversation in terms of like, you know, what is the origin? Where did you learn it from? Like, how did you have to like switch up the ingredients because we're in the States? And this project, this piece is actually inspired by my grandmother's death. She passed away a few years ago, and during her funeral, one of my cousins that lived closer to her, especially when he was in college, they were in the same town, in the same city. He would always visit her, and he talks about this dish that she makes, zhajiang, that he, you know, it's the best he has. He loves it, and you know, it's not that it is the best, but a lot of times when you think about the dishes that these family member makes and the elders that make for you, it's really more about the memory. It's really more about, you know, what that whole environment while you're in it, that what comes with the smell, the conversations. So when my cousin said that, like, you know, I love grandma's jjajangmyeon, now that she's gone, I'll never be able to taste it again. At that moment, I was like, how come none of us learned this from her? And so Dish is a project where I do get together with youth in the community to try to learn dishes so that they don't lose that chance of learning a dish and knowing its story that goes with it. And you know, I have, like, with my own grandparents, this experience where, and that really kind of makes me, talking in terms of memory and how it's related to the dish. When I was in 6th grade, I got sent to the States to live with my relatives, and my grandparents happened to be there. And it was a really, really hard time. I was living with my aunt and uncle and my cousin and having a really hard time adjusting. But on the weekends, my aunt would send me to my grandparents and spend the weekend with them. And my grandpa would make stir-fried rice and corn and egg drop soup. It's not the best. It's not like it's better than any of the restaurants, but the memory that came with that, up to this day, corn egg drop soup is still, corn chicken egg drop soup is still my favorite kind of soup. But it is like the fact that it was at a place that was safe for me. So I kind of wanted to have other youth in the community experience that. So this is Dish, which actually is a website where I have posted recipes and their videos. Actually, it's a DIY video where they recorded their conversations and learning how to make it. And there's also a few dishes actually that I learned from my parents as well. That's on this website. So you can also, if you're interested, you know, check out my website to see this piece. Oh, I'm sorry. Did not mean for that to show up. There's me and the dragon boat again, because we're a pretty happy group. I'm like really thankful. They also are a part of the Dish project as well. And with Dish, I also had this one branch project called Dish, the Real Chinese Food. Again, my friend, she did another guerrilla performance fest. And this time the location was at Rittenhouse Square. And you know how it's like super posh, it's in the middle of the city. And the duration was for the entire week during lunch hour. Wait, was it during, no, the entire week. So I did Dish, the Real Chinese Food during lunchtime. Basically, I got a little cart built, transported all the way from Kensington to Rittenhouse Square. Of course, my truck broke down at that time. So there are a few days where I took SEPTA, going on to SEPTA with this little cart. There were a couple days where actually friends of mine offered they had their vehicle to, like, you know, pick up and drop off. But every day I gave out foods that's basically stuff that I've learned that's more like home cooked meals, an appetizer and a main dish. Sometimes they are heated, like I kind of reheat it so it's like a nice crispy, you know, garlic chive boxes. Or sometimes I just kind of like, you know, there are certain things where I can like garnish, you know, last minute there. But it was pretty much open to anyone who wants to try it. They do have to eat it at their own risks. And it was a way to kind of like show people that actually real Chinese food is not what you eat at Chinese restaurants. These are kind of like the homemade dishes where we eat at home. And some of them might be a little weird, but after, you know, everyone after trying it was like, oh my God, this is so good. And it was a really fun experience also because the first 2 days I was in there, I was in the park, but then the security people started to say, yeah, you can't do this. You can't be in the park and start giving out food, because obviously there are also homeless people that came for the food. And they were actually all really, really lovely people, like engaged with me and talked to me about what it was and exchanged like, you know, their dishes from when they grew up with. But they're like, yeah, you can't do this within Rittenhouse Square. But the security guard, they're so nice too. They're like, you know what you can do is you can actually do right outside Rittenhouse Square, right out the gate. And, you know, the police were there too. They were like, and if anyone gives you any trouble, you let us know, we'll protect you. So it was like really kind of sweet that even though they're like, okay, we can't let you do this, but you know what, here's a spot you want to do. And then like one homeless person was like, okay, you don't want to be in this spot because there's this guy that, like, you know, plays chess for money there. You don't want to take his spot. You want to kind of move over here a little bit. It was a really, really nice experience, but also to be able to share like some of the things that people just can't get in, sometimes can't get in restaurants. And then me and artist Dave Q, we collaborated on this, which is this Dish the Meal Kit. It was taking 3 dishes from the Dish Project and making them into meal kits. But the catch is this is not something just to make money. What we were doing is we were asking people to pay as they wish, what they think it's worth for these kits. And the money that comes from that would, one, buy the ingredients that we need, all the ingredients that we need. But 2, if they're we're going to actually donate the same amount of food or maybe even more to a community with food need. We got a Velocity Fund grant for this, and that was $5,000, which helped us buy, like, you know, the vacuum seal machine, printing the recipes, giving people who provided these recipes an honorarium, and all the packaging stuff that we needed. What we ended up doing in terms of giving the food to a population with food need is actually we connected to, I'm not remembering the name right now, but one of the high schools in Germantown, that's actually an agriculture high school, and they had a food science program. So what we did is that the produce that we had, that we can buy, all the produce that we have, we actually gave them the produce, gave them all the recipes, and the teacher of the food science course basically led the students in learning how to make these dishes. The students in that school are mostly African American and Hispanic. So it's really kind of nice in terms of a cultural exchange for them to learn. And here's a photo of them making wontons, shrimp and pork wontons. And they also learned how to make jjajangmyeon, which is this noodle dish. And also, what else do they make? Oh, and then like these vegetable dishes as well. So it was really great to be able to do this. We really wanted to expand this the next year with more funding, but we couldn't get funding, so that didn't happen. Part of it was working also with Philadelphia to kind of work with their students and their produce, and you know, have it at a bigger network. Let's see. I think I'm almost finished here. Oh, here's me, the dragon boat during a race. I love my community. Most currently, I'm actually working on a huge mural for the Philadelphia Chinatown Crane Building, which is you've seen right here. And this is actually, that is the site that me and my team are going to have our mural. Currently, I'm working with a team of artists of Tsening Tsai and Yuri Jones on the exterior mural. And then also there's an interior mural that's also is being worked on by Amy Chen. And we're currently at the outreach phase. We're reaching out to various Asian communities, not just the Chinatown community, but various Asian communities, satellite communities like in South Philly, Northeast, to try to actually have the youth do kind of a DIY sort of like oral history to talk to their family about like their experiences with Chinatown, you know, their history, because there are a lot of like people in Chinatown that have multiple generational histories in Chinatown, and then also what they want to see in the future, because the theme for the mural is in Chinese we say 承前启后继往开来, which means the past supporting the future. So this is my latest project right now. I think that's it. Yes, that is the end of my slideshow. I hope I didn't go over time.
And we went over time, but you know what? This was such an amazing presentation. I absolutely loved it, and I thank you so much for doing this. And it's powerful. It's about community. It's about family. There's just 5 million things I could talk about, and you're really a fantastic artist. And I just want to open this in case anyone has any questions before we go, because you know that's what we're here for. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us yourself, since we're a small group. So
and they're mostly my friends too.
Oh,
I don't know Tammy though. Hi Tammy. Anyone questions? I guess I was pretty thorough.
I had a question.
Hey.
Please.
I have a question, Yvonne. How did your parents feel about being videotaped, being recorded for your art with something so personal, And are they okay with you, putting it out there on your website?
They don't know about this piece. Well, they know about this piece because I recorded them, but they have not seen the finished piece because I don't think they've ever checked out my website.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
You're okay with being recorded. Okay.
So my sister, which is here, Ethel, don't tell dad and mom about this. Hi, Suja.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
So it seems like a lot of not a lot, like quite a few pieces of yours explore the theme of love or relationships. Can you talk a little bit about it? Like, is there a specific reason you explore that theme, or you just naturally, or like, can you share a little bit?
I don't know why. I do believe in love, but I'm also for the most part more of an optimistic rather than pessimistic person. I know people who are Facebook friends with me probably will think otherwise because I have a lot of angry posts, but I actually do believe in love over hate in a sense. And I think a lot of times, for my own work, I don't want things to be like really preachy or telling you that you're wrong. I rather talk about the subject matter through humor or love, because I think that way people will be more convinced and really there's more buy-in into it. And I think that's probably the reason. Yeah, but just by nature, I'm a very nice person, I think.
You know that. You don't have to say that. You don't have to declare.
Thanks. Yeah. Anyone else? Ooh. That's it.
Well, I love I think your instructor told you. 3 minutes to mourn. I almost felt like that could have been a title of a show right there.
I mean, yeah, especially I think I teach art at a college level, and I feel like that art students, especially at the beginning, they treat everything so precious. That was one of the things in ceramic. When you go into ceramics as a major, the first thing they tell you is that like not everything is precious. It is in a sense, but like at the end of the day, clay is clay. And so you have to be able to, and that kind of really formed in terms of my own artwork, where I don't really focus on the object. In one sense, I'm very egotistical. I'm a Leo, so I mean, obviously, I want to be the center of attention, and I think for artists, a lot of us do become artists because we want that attention. But then at the same time, I feel like, for me at least, that's not the role of my artwork. So if it does, blow up, if it does break, if it's not successful. Like I wouldn't call my dish project super successful because I wish more people would have participated in it. I wish I had more time to get more people to be a part of it. I wish I had more time to process all the videos I have and put it onto the website, which I haven't gotten to. But I'm okay with that because yeah, like the work that I make is not stuff that I can make a living off of. So I am going to do it at my leisure, at how I want to do it. And so if all the videos are not up there, so be it. One day when I have more time I'll put it up there. But yeah, but like to me, art in itself, even though it is important to me, I don't see it as a sort of like, oh my God, a piece broke. What am I gonna do? It's like, no, you have to move on. You have to move on.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing was about the food part, because I feel like food can really bring us together, obviously, because we all have to eat, and we kind of like food. At the same time, it can separate us too. I mean, for example, when you start talking, let's say, about rice, everyone has a very different way to making rice, and if you start really getting into the details, that in there be an argument, but the reality is we usually don't fight over food. Thank God.
Yeah. I mean, another thing is like a lot of times if you think about it, literally like what they say, the proof is in the pudding. Like the people who had come to eat at when I was at Rittenhouse Square, they had no idea what they were. Like, for example, like I made a Chinese stewed egg, and it's like, it's literally this like hard-boiled egg that's like brown. And, you know, now it's like really, you know, trendy and ramen and stuff like that. But when you look at a brown egg, people are gonna be like, what the hell is this? You know, but once they eat it, they're like, oh, okay, it actually tastes good. So there are those differences, but if you really like dive into it, it actually and kind of kick that away and just seeing it for what it is, I think it helps out a lot.
I completely agree. And we learn to accept, you know, other people, and it's just really beautiful. Anyone has any questions? I don't want to keep everyone here all night long, which I could keep talking to Yvonne for the rest of the night. So
Yeah.
I guess I have an observation, and that was why I was raising a question about love, the theme of love. Because I noticed that, correct me if I'm wrong, I noticed that when your earlier work, especially the ceramic one, explore, it's more gruesome, it's more brutal. There's no, it's not gentle, put it that way. But then later on, your work, it become more gentle, more loving, more caring, and calling for the universal connection. So is that, can you talk a little bit about it? Is it something to do with your
you know, that's interesting. I think I never realized that. And I think part of the reason, now that you've pointed that out, if I think about the work over there in earlier work, it really is more focused on like me as the center in terms of like, this is when I read these stories,
Yeah,
I reflect upon it. And then I think actually it does have to do with actually my involvement with the Dragon Boat community and the Chinatown community, when I start to see outside of myself. And I think that's actually when there was that like slow change in terms of like, you know, sometimes it's like my own personal experience and point of view is not the only kind. And then seeing what other people's experiences are and be like, oh my gosh, like that's like, you know, it's like, wow. And so like, I think, and I think also it has to do with age. I'm getting old. I mean, like, so as you get older, I think we all become more gentle and more, and not as critical, but really seeing things more with an understanding eye.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, not all people age that way, but cool. I'm glad you age that way.
Well, I'm gonna end it there. Otherwise, we'll stay here tonight. I again just want to thank you. Thank you for being everyone. Thank you for being here.
Marcia, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to follow up and be like, thank you for your presentation tonight. And, you know, I would love to see like you go back to the dish series again some point in the future of like, you know, just experimenting, reaching out to other communities.
You did buy a meal kit. That was awesome.
I did. I got praised at for like my leftovers when I went to work. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I mean, most of you guys are my friend. Hi, Abby. Hey, sister. And yeah, thank you all for coming. There's my sister. She's so dorky. From California. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make this into a family reunion. Wait, who is Tammy? Tammy, do I know you? But thank you for coming, Tammy. All right.
All right. Well, thank you again, and have a good night, everyone. And maybe we'll do part 2.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone.